AB will be joining us any minute now. AB, are you there? Oh,
I think
how
I'm
are
here
you?
now.
Sorry.
Hi.
I wasn't sure if you were there or not.
No, I think I am here now. This is all
Okay.
very new to me, this format, so we'll figure it out, Carla.
Myself as well. Like I said, Marion usually leads these, so anyone watching, sorry if there's a few hiccups along the way. So let's start with just telling us about yourself.
Well, thank you. I mean, if anyone is watching, thanks for tuning in. I hope I don't bore you, but I love talking about ringette and officiating. So we'll try to spend less time on me and more on that. But I am a teacher, so I work at Durham Alternative Secondary School with the Durham District School Board, and I'm head of special education. So I work with students with a variety of educational needs, and at a school with a lot of students that have also very diversified needs in their personal lives. So that's what I do right now. And I live in Curtis with my husband and my son, who just turned 1 a month ago. And I grew up in Sunderland, Ontario. And I love ringette. I've been refereeing, I think, 20 years now. And I refereed rugby for a long time as well. And I just love sports. Yeah.
So what age did you start roughing around?
I started roughing when I was 14. So basically as soon as I could in Sunderland. And I was fortunate enough that I had Karen Meek, who many people know, and Karen would come to Sunderland frequently and referee. And so she became a mentor of mine early on. And I kind of just started out of necessity because they needed people to do it. And it was a way to make money. And I was already refereeing basketball and volleyball at my old elementary school, so refereeing like the grades 6, 7, and 8 kids, and I had umpired fastball as well. So I just thought, okay, I'll do ringette too.
So were you a player at the time?
I did play. I think I started playing when I was 10 or 11. I didn't play very long. I only played until I was 16. I figure skated for a long time. And then for 2 years, I was figure skating and also playing ringette. So I would run back and forth between like a figure skating competition, change skates, go to my ringette tournament. So I did that for 2 years and then decided that I had to choose, or maybe my parents made me choose is probably more like it. And so I chose ringette. And yeah, I just played in Sunderland in our B league. And the last year I played, I think I was Bell or Open. We had a lot of combined age groups then, and we didn't have a goalie. So I just said, all right, I'll play goalie. So my last year I played goalie and was awful and very bad. But it was fun and my team needed someone. So that's how I ended my ringette career as a player. And then I liked refereeing way more. So I just stuck at it.
What about, you have family that played? Your sisters played, did they not?
So I'm the oldest of 4. So I have my sister Tracy, who's 2 years younger than me. She played as well. She refereed a little bit too, but didn't really like it. She's a little more quiet, and she still plays now. And my sister Becky, who many people know, also played, and she still referees. And then my brother Stephen didn't play ringette, obviously, but he did referee hockey for quite a while as well at quite a high level. So yeah, we were all involved, and we all figure skated, which was a huge blessing now, as I was never I had to work at my skating from a strength standpoint, but technically I've always been a good skater because of figure skating. So anyone thinking about learning to skate, figure skating is a good way to go. Yeah, so even my brother had to do the little figure skating carnivals, little costumes. And
that's interesting, because usually a lot of people say that ringette is the way to go to learn how to skate. But I mean, there's a lot
I think that may be true.
Yeah.
Obviously, ringette skating is so important,
but for officiating, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, well, I
think angles and everything.
Yeah, like figure skating, it's the balance and turning and all those little intricate like mohawks, jumping forwards to backwards. So just technically, you kind of learn all those things from figure skating instructors. And in my house, I had a very athletic, sports-minded family, and it was a rule. Like if you wanted to play other things on skates, you had to figure skate. So we all figure skated for
Awesome.
2 or 3 years, and then decided to stay or to move on. So
That's pretty interesting. I like that. How did you feel the first time you were on the ice skating? So officiating. So I mean, you've officiated all these other sports, but getting on the ice to be an official is different. And do you remember your first experience?
I just remember honestly being cold all the time because the Sunderland Arena was freezing. And I honestly don't think I really enjoyed it until I found a way to be warm, which sounds so silly. But I was like, I can remember crying after games and my mom having to come in and sit with me and like, put my hands under my armpit. Like I was just freezing all the time. And so I don't really know when I hit a point that I actually started liking it. I liked probably the kind of control factor. Like that's not a great word, but I am a very type A person. And so I like to worry about myself. It's not that I don't like team sports or team events, but I was never a big fan of group work in school so the thing about officiating for me is like, if I make a mistake, it's all on me. If I can't figure it out, it's all on me and my partner. So I think that's what I really liked was that it all came down to me and my choices. And and that's something that's still true that I like to be able to take responsibility for myself. And yeah, but I just remember being cold when I started.
I honestly, I taught skating for like 5 years, and I think I froze every single time. And I
Did
said,
you?
I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, because I found it to be the coldest experience of my life.
Wow. I didn't know
And
you
yeah,
taught skating.
well, I could skate when I was younger. Um, so the officiating pathway, we got to touch on that a little bit. So you got into it. Karen was your mentor, but how did you learn about? Did you talk to Karen about it and say, how do I do this? Or did you research, or did they come to you? Did associations, were they looking?
Yeah.
How do you get into it?
Karen absolutely was a big push. And then I went to a few tournaments my sisters were playing at. And I remember, I think I was 17 or 18, so hadn't been refereeing all that long, but at the Whitby Ringette tournament, and I had no idea that like you could do anything with refereeing. I was just doing it because that's what you do in a small town. You help out, any way you can. And I had a conversation. I remember it was in Pad 2 of Iroquois Park with both Derek Berger and Brent Bunting. And they just said, like you should be part of this provincial officiating development program. And if you want to go to provincials and you want to do other things, we think you can. And no one had ever said that to me before. And I didn't know even what it was. But they had seen me referee and thought that I could do it. So I just said, yeah, like I want to, if you think I can, then let's set those goals. And that's kind of how it started. So I joined the Provincial Officiating Development Program and got to work with a lot of different people, and then went to my first Provincial A championships when I was 18, which was a big learning experience, but also very fun. And I think it's important that we forget that sometimes, that like I would have had no idea if someone hadn't said to me, this is what you can do, or have you thought about this?
And I think that's why we're going to continue to have these kind of conversations, because I think there's a lot of young men and women and the girls that play who maybe don't know the experiences that are out there and don't know the possibilities of being an official. So the Provincial Officiating Development Group, what is that? What is that? Pod? I know what it is, but can you explain a little bit about that, just for any viewers that might be saying, what is that and how do I get involved?
Yes. So it was a little different when I was first involved, like years ago.
Yeah, we've upgraded a little bit.
Yes. But now it's an officiating development pathway. And essentially what we do is we look at officials who are emerging in the sport and show potential and show that they also want to improve. So it's not just that they're good skaters or they have an understanding of the game, but they really have a desire to get better. and we work with them on achieving the next level wherever they're at. So typically, once an official hits a level 3, which is the ability to officiate at the A level of Ringette, they graduate from the program. And then we're hoping to set up some more mentorship beyond that. But the program itself is about getting our young, newest officials that show promise opportunities to go to tournaments, to have some mentoring, to have some coaching that is more consistent. Because as you said, it is hard to get out to tournaments and to know even what's available if you don't have somebody supporting you. And this year we went to a regional model where we could have more officials involved. We used to have only about 10. And this year we were able to include about 20. So we almost doubled the number of officials involved. And we have shouldn't say little, but our pockets of officials in Eastern region and Central, Southern, Western, in the North. And we have a kind of a pod manager in charge of helping them learn and improve. And they have, video chats and they get feedback at their games. So it's been a really, really successful program for us. It's certainly not perfect, but it really has been helpful in getting officials out. And so any official that is interested in it, I would encourage you to reach out to your regional coordinator. And if you don't know who that is, reach out to somebody you do know, and they will be able to help you find that person.
Or they can really reach out to you or I, and we can probably direct them as well.
Carla or myself too. Yeah.
Yeah. Just in case.
Yes. Good point, Carla.
So I got a question here. Is as a mom, an official chair, and someone with a full-time job, how do you balance everything? Because I see you at the rink all the time. So, what's it like? How do you have time for all this?
It's certainly been more challenging now that I have a son. And I don't feel like I was at the rink as much this last season since Reese has been born than I normally was. But I do think, and it's what works for me. I don't know. I'm not saying that other things don't work for other people, but I really am goal oriented, and I try to compartmentalize things in my life. So even though you might have seen me at the arena, it's probably rare you've seen me there with Reese. And it's because I really try to put whatever I'm focused on or whatever the goals are for that day or that weekend, that it's kind of only one thing. And I was at a seminar for education a few years ago, and a woman was speaking there about multitasking and how it's actually not something that we do. Like, we think we can do it, but our brains actually aren't capable of it. And it really spoke to me. It's something I think I always knew, but having her say that. And so I really do try to just focus on, like, if I'm at the arena and I have a wonderful family and friends who are very supportive that can take my son, then I can go to the arena for the weekend and just focus on that. And if I decide I'm not going to referee for a weekend and I'm home with my family, then that is what I try to do. I might slip out to do a game here or there. And also I waited till I was older to have, I had Reese when I was 35. So, I guess I was 34, but anyway, I waited till I was older, and that was a choice that I made, because there were other goals that I had in my career and in Ringette that I wanted to achieve first. And so it really was a planned out process. Huh? And now, it's not that there aren't more things in Ringette I want to do, but I'm pretty satisfied with what I've achieved as an official. And so I really do feel like my focus now is on helping other people develop in Ontario, and spending more time with family and even doing things that I haven't done in a long time, because you're always at the rink. So, yeah. So,
I mean, my next question is kind of, what is your next goal? I mean, I know you've been to countless CRCs and championships. So what's the ultimate goal? Do you have one more goal that you want to achieve as an official, or have you kind of hit them all and now it's just, like you said, helping others?
I would like to go to one more Canada Winter Games. So I went to, I've been to one before, and I would like to go to another. I think the next one's in PEI, and it would be awesome if I was able to go with my sister. I think that would be very cool. So that is one more thing I would like to do. And then, I also think it would be cool to go back to World Ringette Championships, but as a supervisor of officials, not on the ice necessarily. I think I've done one junior and two senior worlds, and there's lots of other very capable people, but I do think that would be a neat experience as well. Yeah.
So how do you get picked? How do you get picked to be a supervisor over being like an on-ice skater, like on-ice official, sorry?
Right. Well, to be selected as an on-ice official for a World Ringette Championship from Canada, you have to be a level 5 official. And so that's a rank that you achieve only through Ringette Canada. And it requires you to attend Canadian Ringette Championships a certain amount of times and perform at a certain level while you're there. Mm-hmm. And then from that group of officials, you can be selected. And so even if I maintain that level 5 rank, because I am a provincial evaluator, it's kind of having those connections with the International Ringette Federation and Ringette Finland to say, and to put myself out there really to say I would be willing to go. Oh. And so that is one way. And I hope, because I went to a World Championships in Finland and also most recently in BC, that I've made some good connections, that might be a possibility for me down the road.
Awesome. Great. So you've done it all, but what's your favorite memory? Do you have one thing that really sticks in your mind?
I don't know. There's so many memories that are so good, but I have to say that when I was just in BC at World Ringette Championships in November with an all-female crew from Canada, in Karen Meek and Jamie Nelson and Laura Knowles as the supervisor, so that was neat. We walked through Stanley Park, and we ran into, I think they were a U12 team from Richmond Hill. Oh, and they honestly these little girls made my day because they saw our World Ringette jackets and they asked us for photos, and I felt like a celebrity, and they were asking questions like, are the rules the same? What do you say to the goalie at 3? Or, when it's 3 in her count, do you still say 3? We were like, yeah, the rules are basically the same. We're doing the same stuff. So that was kind of neat because so often, I don't know, you kind of feel like an afterthought. You don't like sometimes even walking through the arena. So that was just a cool moment where they were so excited to meet the referees that they had seen from the World Ringette Championship. So thank you, Richmond Hill U12.
That's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah. I understand where they're coming from. I've played for 30 a lot of years, and it's like the officials are always kind of scary. They kind of seem scary to young players. So I can just imagine when they actually when you kind of burst that bubble and you realize that they're just normal people just doing that job on the ice, and that you can talk to officials and you can interact with them and ask them questions. It's a whole other experience and a whole other level of kind of respect and enjoyment of the game. And I like that. I like that they were, that they were so engaged with you, but also in the last 15, 20 years, I've seen such a difference in the officials and how they interact with people, and how it's not so I'm over here and you're over here. And now it's kind of, you're more engaging and you want people to ask you the questions and you want to clarify. And I think that's awesome. And I think that's huge for our sport, and just getting involved in people, getting involved as officials, and having that open communication with officials. And I think you and your past chairs have really done an amazing job at making that happen.
No, I agree completely. And actually, Iris Todd, who is an amazing referee and mentor out in Alberta, she said to me once that officiating is quite simple. It's just about building relationships with people. That's all it is. And it really, at the root of it, that really is all it is. And as you said, just on the ice, it's the signals that you do that are clear. That's a way of communicating with people. It's how you speak to the players, the coaches. When you're in the lobby, smiling as opposed to looking like you're angry, like all those little things really matter. And I think that that's hopefully something that as chair of Ontario, we talk about a lot, is that you need to be personable. You need to be likable, because they're going to dislike you anyway. That's the nature of what we do. And it's okay, because that's part of the job, especially at the level I referee at. Like, I know I show up at the rink. Some people are really happy and there are others that aren't. And so because of how I referee. So, and that's okay. But at the very least, I can try to always be honest and to always be in a good mood and to give 100% and to, at least have honest discussions with people if they don't like what I call or they don't like what I do.
So. That's good. We had a question come in, and it's actually it's a great question. Any words of advice for young officials just starting out?
That's a very good question. It is so challenging to be a new official in any sport. It is so isolating, and you feel so alone. And I can certainly relate to that. And I'm not sure until you do it, I'm not sure people really understand how scary it is to be out there and everyone is looking at you and you have one other person and they're across the ice from you. So it really is intimidating. I think a big thing for new officials is I would encourage to try to reach out to, and that can be difficult, I know, in associations to find somebody to act as your mentor, but reach out to somebody. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid not to know things. There are still things I don't know. When I got this, when they sent me what we were going to talk about, when they said there could be rules questions, my first thought was, oh my gosh, not rules questions, because there's always going to be things that come up and you go, oh, I'm not really sure what to do. And it's okay not to know. So I would find a mentor and somebody that you trust. I would ask a ton of questions about things you don't understand. And if you want to go to tournaments and if you want to get better and improve, tell somebody. I think women especially, and I don't know if you would agree with me, Carla, but women especially, I think, feel guilt sometimes about admitting that these are my goals and this is what I want to do. It's hard for anybody, but I really think women struggle with that, and young girls especially. And it's okay to say to somebody, I would really like to get better at this refereeing thing. I think it would be very cool to go to provincials one day. How do I do that? And so I think setting goals is really good, and talking to somebody about what you want to do.
I think that's great advice. I think and it's something I think that we as Ringette Ontario, as the officiating committee, are going to try and reach out and do more with too, right? And try to have these opportunities, these workshops, these online things where newer officials can jump on and ask silly questions and ask, the questions that you're kind of maybe thinking, if I ask this, somebody's going to say, you shouldn't be an official. You don't know the answer to this. But you know what? If you have that question, 5 other kids may have that same question. Heck, older officials may have that question, because it's like, oh yeah, I never really thought of it that way. So
I even do it. And people who know Rob Jury, like Rob will admit, I text Rob all the time. Like, did I screw this up today? Did I do this rule right? Like, I think it's right. And that's part of being a good referee, is you have to admit that you're not perfect. Like, I try really hard to be perfect. I read the rule book. I have highlights in there of things I often screw up, so that I can, when I go to it and I'm trying to prep for events, I go to the highlighted section because I know there are things that I have trouble remembering, and they don't happen that often, which makes it. But you just have to be honest. Well, and as you said, lots of people don't know. You're often not the only one.
If you haven't actually seen it happen in a game, I mean, maybe you read it in page 82 of the rule book, but unless you experience it, you're not probably, you're going to question your judgment on that call or on the situation. So, as a young official, and until you see it happen, you might not know really the answer to it. And you hope you do, and you hope you make the right call, or your partner makes that right call, but sometimes you don't, and that's okay too. And I think that's the big scariest thing about a young official. What happens if I don't make the right call and then everyone's yelling at me?
Yeah. And you know what? In the time period, and a lot of times when I watch referees and I know they don't know, and I just want to run out on the ice and rescue them, which I
Yeah.
know I can't. Like, you just need to decide something. And that's for all officials. When you don't know, you just make a decision. Just
And,
make a decision, let the game move on, and you will learn from it after if it was the wrong one.
and
And
honestly,
honestly, a lot of the times, the players and fans don't know either.
that's I was gonna say honestly, as a player, I've questioned things that they tell me one thing, great, makes sense to me at the time, right? And as a coach, even if you make the wrong call and everyone knows it, if you come over later and say, I made the wrong call, people aren't going to say, oh my God, you're fired. They're going to say, that's fine. Next time we'll know. And the more open I think you are about maybe missing this or missing that, sometimes I think that goes a long way with coaches as well and players. Like that, I missed the crease call. Sorry, and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
great. As long as it's communication.
And
It's all about
I have a
communication.
script in my head. Yeah. And I have a script I've developed from experience of those situations. It's a simple thing. I skate over and I say, I'm not 100% sure that I have made the right decision here, but this is what I think is right. And I will look it up when I get in the ref room, and I will clarify it with you after. And that's obviously, I have the confidence now to do that. That's harder for a younger referee to do, but you earn a ton of credibility by admitting you don't know if you're unsure. And then if you actually do follow up, if you see that coach later to say, even if it's a couple games, remember that game last week? You know what? I was wrong. I should have given the ring to the other team. Like, that is all credibility, and it goes back to building relationships, that they know that you're not going to try to lie to them on the ice. Nobody likes being lied to.
No, and you can read it all over their face, and that's when coaches kind of seem to start picking at that official or that situation, and as a coach, I've asked questions. I probably should know. I probably don't know. Maybe I'm just saying it to say it, but again, yeah, when the official says, I made the wrong call or I made the right call, you need to look it up in the rule book and you'll see, hey, that goes a long way sometimes too, because it means you're confident and you know what you're talking about. And I better go look up the rule book myself, because sometimes, well, a lot of times I think that's what coaches need to do. So this month is Safe Sport Awareness Month. How has Rowan's Law and concussion awareness contributed to understanding awareness of safe sport and for officials? How has that impacted you?
Well, I think personally, because I played rugby for a lot of years, and I'm sure anyone that played any type of sport where concussions were more prevalent before Rowan's Law would admit that we sort of had a societal issue with people not playing. Like, it was cool to play when you were hurt, and you didn't want to look like you weren't tough. And so it was almost encouraged to play through injuries. Like, you were super tough if you got hit in the head and were dizzy, but you could still go out and play. And we sort of, as a society, I think, almost encourage that. And it's seen in professional sports. And I think what Rowan's Law has done for me personally, but I think for the greater sporting society in Ontario anyway, is really emphasize that it's not okay to continue to play when you are hurt, whether it's a concussion or any type of injury, and that we have a responsibility to protect everybody involved in the game. And I think that it's really just the knowledge of that and the education surrounding Rowan's Law has really made it okay now for people to say, you know what, my head is hurting. I don't feel good. And I think my friend got hit in the head. I should say something. I should speak up. And, Rowan played ringette and rugby, which I think is really interesting because they are two sports I'm passionate about. And I had the opportunity at a Rugby Canada conference a few years ago to hear her parents speak and to meet them. And they said, oh, we recognize you. You've refereed her in ringette. And I just thought that they were such brave people for sharing her story, because they are making such a difference in the world of sport. And really, she is going to save lots of people. And so I think that tragedy is really amazing for the greater sporting environment, that her parents were so brave to make these changes and to be comfortable enough to talk about her. And I think even from an officiating standpoint, I'm not sure we considered so much about officials and concussions, but we really talk about it now. And I know for me on the ice, I don't have a fear anymore of like I'm overstepping a boundary if I think a player has been hurt or hit their head. Like I don't have a problem now saying to the coach, like, I think number 10 hit her head. Can you just... And so I really feel like collectively, it's made us work together a little more to keep everybody safe.
I was in a game once and the goalie took a pretty good shot to the head, and the official was right on kind of coming out and saying, like, I think the goalie's not feeling well. Like, she's basically come out and said that. And I don't think a few years ago an official would have kind of stepped into that role as, just, and it wasn't to say she had to come out or anything. It was just trying to make the coach aware, like, you might want to talk to her and, like, let's call a timeout and talk to her because I think, if she's hurt, she's hurt. And I think, it never hurts to check at that point. And both teams were very aware of it. And I thought it was a great call by the official to just check in on her because, it was an 18+ game. So sometimes they're like, well, she's an adult, doesn't matter. She can make her own decision. But you know what? You hit her on the head where sometimes we want to be so tough.
Yeah.
And when you're an adult, I'm an adult, I'm tough, it doesn't matter. But you know what? It matters because it's not worth it now. We know how precious our heads can be, and it's awesome. And I was really proud of the official for stepping up and doing that. And I mean, not that we're like they're mandated to do that. Obviously, we've talked about that, but I think if you see something, you have to say something. And I think it was great. And it kind of leads into just the whole safe sport and feeling safe and feeling that, how do you feel about that? And how do officials feel safe in the environment with coaches and spectators? Do we have enough boundaries in place for them to feel safe? And do you have any examples of if you were ever felt unsafe? I've seen a few incidences in the hallways and here and there, but any time that you've actually felt unsafe being an official with Ringette Ontario?
Certainly refereeing rugby, I've had a few more instances where I definitely felt unsafe. With Ringette, I think some of the worst cases were when I was younger and was a new official. And, like people coming to the dressing room to question me after the game. And when I reflect on it now, like, I don't think that they were trying to be abusive or aggressive in that way. But when you're a 15-year-old kid and you have a 40-year-old man knocking on the door after the game, upset and wanting you to clarify what you called, it's very intimidating. And it creates a very unsafe environment. And I think now that I'm older, it's kind of funny because the level I referee now isn't typically where we see the worst abuse in Ringette and in all sports. At the higher level where you have coaches and players that typically know the rules better, and the referees are more experienced and have tools to handle abusive situations, it's not really needed as much. And unfortunately, where we see a lot of abuse is with new officials who are just trying to learn, and they don't have the tools to deal with that. And nor should they have to. And so I think from an officiating standpoint, we certainly need to do more to equip our younger officials with what to do in situations where they are being verbally abused, attacked on the ice, in the dressing room. And that is something that we are working on, because the feedback I get a lot is, I just didn't know what to do. And often parents will say to me, well, they should have just kicked the coach out. Easy to say, very hard to do when you're, a 17-year-old kid on the ice and it's an adult screaming and yelling at you. So from an officiating standpoint, that is something that we are working on. I also think that we don't use the tools we have sometimes enough, and that's more at an older age, once we're at a provincial level of Ringette, but the unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, and that's tools referees have to use when coaches and players are out of hand. And I don't think we use it enough. And again, we kind of feel bad. Like, I don't want to make this worse, but I think sometimes we do need to step up and say, you've crossed a line and this is the outcome. But what I feel most passionate about, and I talk about it a lot, not just in Ringette, but in my teaching career as well, is I feel as a society, we have a responsibility to protect kids and minors and women. I mean, we need to protect each other, but those groups in particular. And I feel like we do a really bad job of that in a sporting environment. And for some reason, behaviors that we wouldn't accept in any other realm of life, if it's at the rink or, on the field, everyone goes, oh, well. And that's what bothers me more than anything. And I have a really hard time when I see things that I think are wrong. And I speak up all the time. Whether or not if I'm just watching a game in an arena and I see someone freaking out about something at a ref, I will say something. And I think we need more adults, when they see something wrong, to say something. And I think almost any time I have had to deal with a fan or a coach, in the stands or, out in the lobby, almost always there's people after that go, oh, I was just going to say something. I was almost going to say something. I was going to say something, but then you did. And that's not good enough. It's just not good enough. You need to be the one that says something. And when I walk into a rink and I see a 40-year-old man or woman screaming at a 15-year-old kid refereeing, and everybody just stands there, I don't understand it. And I'm not trying to be critical, but I think it needs to be said that I don't understand why people just stand there. I really don't. But it happens far too often. And it's not part of the game, and it's not something referees should just have to put up with. And I really wish that adults took a better stance. And I think, Carla, you would agree, because you have a lot of research in sport, that almost all situations of abuse, whether it's verbal abuse or psychological abuse or physical or sexual abuse, almost always somebody knew, or somebody had a feeling, somebody saw something, and they didn't do anything.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I just think it's unacceptable anymore. Like, it's unacceptable ever, but there's so much communication out now that we really have to, and I'm not just talking about officials. I mean, obviously that's what I'm passionate about, but if we see a coach screaming and yelling at a 10-year-old kid on the ice, why is that okay too? I don't think it is. And we need to do, I guess my message is, in my rant here, is that adults need to step up.
No, and I think, like, this goes back to us developing our coaches as well, and then for them to be creating those rules and those boundaries for the fans, because obviously the fans take part in a lot of that abuse. I mean, you have the boards, you can tune it out to a certain extent, but it gets over those boards. You can hear what they're yelling at you, and when you're 14, 15, 16, hearing anything negative is hard on you. No matter how tough you think you are, you hear that over and over and over again, and that's why we lose. We lose players who are playing and officiating, and we lose all these young and up-and-coming officials. Mm-hmm. And I think people sometimes forget that if we don't have officials, we don't have games. Mm-hmm. If we don't have games, Ringette is no longer can be played as much as we'd like to see it played, right? Mm-hmm. So, thank you. That was great. And we're doing a whole Safe Sport Month, and we're going to be talking about the avenues when you don't feel safe, how to, what to do, who to talk to, how to report. And I think that it's the same with officiating. When officials don't have their voice yet on the ice, or even after and something happens, who do you want them to go to? I mean, we will listen to anybody who comes to it goes into my email box or it's on my phone or it's on any of the RO staffs. But who do you want them to go to in the officiating community? Do you want them to go to their RIC? Do you want them to come directly? I mean, we need to give people very straight pathways on, I didn't like this, this happened, this is the team. I want people to understand that they have someone to talk to right away and not to sit on it and not to say it happened one time, it doesn't matter. We want people to speak up right away.
Absolutely. And again, because a lot of it is younger referees, they take the brunt of the abuse. It really is, if they don't know who their referee in chief is, that is who they should go to first, to the referee in chief. And then the referee in chief should bring it forward to the regional coordinator. Because if it's bad enough, I will certainly bring it forward to Ringette Ontario.
Yeah.
And if they don't know who the referee in chief is, go to a person in the association they know, because usually those games are happening in a house league format. So they should know a trustworthy source within their association. And I think they need to bring any concern forward. And I mean, I'm not sure people even understand, like, we have kids that get followed off the ice after a game through the lobby to the room. We have kids that get left notes on the door, like, you suck. Thanks for ruining our game. Right? Yelled at when they're walking out to their car. And this is what I mean about, like, I've seen it. People just stand there and don't say anything. And this is an adult yelling at a child. And so I also think sometimes that it's not enough to even put the referee in that situation. And that's where I would hope that somebody else would help, who was at the game, would help this referee in making that complaint. Right. And it sort of goes to, like, the role of abuse. Like, we don't want the marginalized or abused person to always have to be the one saying, this happened to me, this happened to me. So yes, referees reach out, but please, parents and adults, like, also say something, because
that's a really good point. A coach, I mean, as a coach, if I see that happening and it's not my bench doing it, or it's the other bench or whoever, or even if it's the game before me or the game after me, as an adult, when that official comes off the ice, I can say, I saw what happened. I'd like to help, basically.
Yes.
Like, I will support you in, let's go talk to somebody about that, because that's not right. And I think we have to do a lot more of that. And that goes for every different avenue, whether you're an official and you saw it, what happened, if you're a coach and you've seen it happen, if you're a player and, like, a parent, for anyone else to step up, for an adult to step up and say, that's not right. And I'm going to be with you, and we're going to go and we're going to talk to somebody about this. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, like, I really feel strongly that the adults, and again, not just in sport and not just in Ringette, but across all facets of life, when you see something wrong, especially when it is with a minor, a kid, you have the power to make a difference, to go check on them. Yeah, go see if they're okay. Find somebody. Like, so many of our referees come off the ice bawling, crying. And a few years ago, I actually just called a coach up who, the referee had called me upset, and I walked her through it and helped her. And then I just called the coach, and he answered the phone, and he didn't even know what to say. Because what do you say? There is nothing to say. There is no excuse for that. I don't care if the referee made the biggest mistake in the entire world. There is nothing you can say that makes that behavior okay. And I think that goes to another point. Sorry, but I'm so passionate about this, is when you look at the percentage of games in all realms of sport that are actually decided by the referee, like the percentage of times the referee actually decides who wins and loses, it's not even 1%. It's so minimal that the referee has that big of an impact. And as a coach, if that's going to be your focus, you're never going to have a team that wins.
Agree.
Ever. So your focus needs to be the things you can control, which isn't the referee. And we all know in sport, it's judgment based. There are games I watch and I think the referee did a great job. Somebody else might not. So if we know that, then why are we making the referee such a big part of our game? And again, it goes to the adults. You need to teach your children that the referee is not a focus. You go to an NHL game, the refs go out first, and what does everybody do? Boo! Like, the game hasn't even started. It drives me insane.
Yeah.
I think they should just walk off, and then there'll be no game. And then yeah, I just, again, like, adults, you play such an important role in developing our kids.
Wouldn't it be amazing if when these officials came out in the lobby, adults came up to them and said, "Great game. That was a great job. That was a great call." Like, what it doesn't always have to be the negative stuff that people dwell on. Yeah,
no,
you skated over the line.
I get that.
Great.
Yeah. And
Right.
I get that more often than not at the level I referee at. I feel like at the higher end, people are very thankful and grateful, and it's almost, and we appreciate it. Please don't misinterpret that, but it's really it's the younger ones who are out there just learning.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt to say. I mean, you are always going to get that great game or good game. But I mean, imagine when you're actually coming out and someone stops you and says, "Thanks so much. I thought that was a great game." Those little things are the things I think those younger officials are going to remember, and they're going to say, "Wow, okay, great," and they're going to feel confident and more confident and gain that confidence they need. But to yell at them and to wear them down we'll just lose them. And briefly, I know that we've kept you a long time. Can you just briefly discuss the rule of two and how we adapted it for officiating? Because I think that's really good for protecting our officials amongst our officials.
Yeah, so the rule of two was an important Ringette Canada directive, I think, initially.
Well, Coach
Ringette Ontario,
and then trickled down.
About keeping athletes safe, and so ensuring that there's always two coaches, I believe, with an athlete at any time. And so from an officiating standpoint, we took that as well and thought that it was also important that we incorporated that rule in some respect. And it's challenging because we do have officials that work together, sometimes where we might have a minor with an adult. So even if we have a 25-year-old and a 17-year-old on the ice together, technically it's in a minor and adult situation. So we looked at the rule of two for coaching, and we put out a directive for officiating that if you are going on the ice with somebody who is a minor and you are an adult, you need to make sure that you are not in the change room with them, and you give them the space that they need to change. Now, when we have tournaments, we're in a large dressing room usually that has separate area to change. But we tried to make it very clear that you should not be alone, even if you're giving feedback, because sometimes we have an evaluator who is watching a younger referee or a minor, and they want to talk to them after the game about how they did. And a lot of times that would take place in the dressing room just without thinking. It's a quiet place to go. That we've now said, instead of it happening there, it just needs to go out in the lobby or somewhere where there are other adults around. And it's to protect both individuals. But we really felt it was important, as you said, to protect all the referees, especially our minors, that we made very clear rules related to the rule of two, that you're not to be alone in a change room if you're an adult with a minor official.
Yeah, I think it's awesome, and I think that other provinces have actually kind of grabbed it and are looking at it and using it, because it's something you don't even think of until there's an issue. So let's make sure that there's no issue and get ahead of it. And we've lasted quite a few years without any big issues, and we're lucky but the scope of everything is changing and has changed a lot. So I think that it's really good that we're setting those parameters now, and we've done a really good job at making that happen and making those younger officials or men and women officials feel comfortable in that environment, which is again going towards retaining our officials and having them just love that aspect of Ringette, which I think is awesome. So I don't want to keep you too much longer. I don't
want to keep you too much longer.
Well, it's bedtime for both of our kids soon. So, But I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we're going to have a few more talks because we have lots of things to discuss. And with COVID going on, we might have more time than we want to discuss them. But just thank you so much, and you have done an amazing job with our officials in the last few years. And we, Ringette Ontario, thanks you. And I'm looking forward to continuing the development pathway for our officials, and hoping that we can make the program even stronger moving forward. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Carla. And thank you, Ringette Ontario. And if there are officials watching who've been engaged this long and you need something, please reach out to me, honestly. I could talk about meeting forever.
Or definitely, even if you leave any comments, if you review it and leave some comments, we'll definitely get you answers. We have our emails are on the Ringette Ontario website. And I am an employee, so I'm here all the time. And Amy is always available when I ask questions. So we love her. And thank you to anybody who did tune in this long. And thanks, Marian, for setting it up. And have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Carla. Bye.